What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the PowerUp podcast with your host Nathan Shields, aka Osiren. Remember to check us out at www.powerupfighters.com and to subscribe to our RSS feed and to this podcast in iTunes. Today my guest is Aussage Sivart, probably better known as Joshua Travis, and this podcast was very, I don't want to say mushy because that's probably not the right word, but it's definitely community-oriented. Josh is a newer player to the scene, and we really get into talking a lot about not only the future of PowerUp and its place in the fighting game community, the Midwest fighting game community, but also just how you can improve your community too, and having that sort of positive community aspect. I mean, community is the buzzword in this podcast for sure. We go a little bit into some of the general information about Josh's early experiences in the fighting game scene and some of his stories. And it's just a pretty good podcast. I enjoyed talking with Josh, and definitely the community aspect. It let me talk a little bit about what I feel PowerUp is, what I hope PowerUp will do for the fighting game community, even if it is just a little something. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll go ahead and let Josh take it from here. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Josh Travis. I go by Aussage Sivart on SRK forums and on some other forums as well. That's Aussage Sivart. Everyone says my name's the one that's impossible to pronounce, but it's just Joshua Travis backwards. So
right.
If you can't pronounce it, just call me Josh.
Well, all right, Josh, you gave me a little bit of like a rundown of what you wanted to talk about, things similar to what Webster was talking about, but kind of like a different spin on them, right?
Yeah, Webster had a great podcast a couple weeks ago, and his was mostly about getting people to play games that they wouldn't normally play. There's a lot of fighting games released all the time, and people would tend to focus on maybe one or two at a time, and it's good to try to play some other stuff, maybe even branch outside of fighting games even, because there's a lot of good competition if you just know where to look and know who to talk to.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll get to that a little bit later, but to kind of give give the listeners a bit more round view of who you are, let's start with some basic introductory questions. How did you start, or how did you get your start in fighting games?
Well, I used to play Dance Dance Revolution pretty competitively. Northwest Indiana had a very huge scene based in Valparaiso, which is about 30 minutes from where I live. And my current roommate, actually, we met through DDR about 8 years ago. And eventually, DDR kind of fizzled away competitively, and we wanted to find something else. And when we got to college, we found a lot of people played Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which is a game I owned. And I played all kinds of fighting games at home, but never really played them competitively. And once we got to there, that's when it all started. I had been in a couple of Soul Calibur 2 tournaments before that, but it wasn't anything serious. I think the best I ever did was got third place in a local tourney.
So your first, what was the first fighting game you remember playing?
First fighting game I remember playing was Super Street Fighter 2 on Super Nintendo. I had that game. I believe my grandma bought it for me, actually, for my birthday. I'm not sure what year that was, but I still have the cartridge. It's sitting in my living room right now.
That's awesome. So it's like a little foreshadowing as to what we'll talk about later as far as strategy or whatever. What are some of your favorite games and why?
My favorite games, as far as fighting games go, are definitely the Soul Calibur series. I know it gets a lot of hate on SRK, but I find it to be a game that requires not just execution or not just knowing your opponent or anything like that, but you need a little bit of everything. It maybe doesn't have a huge focus on combos, but there's a lot of defensive maneuvers, and I really play fighting games defensively, so that's a game I really enjoy. I also like Tatsunoko versus Capcom.
Ah, yes, a man after my own heart. Very good.
Right, yeah. I've been playing that game since the day it came out in Japan. I got it maybe one day later. My girlfriend was nice enough to buy me a stick for Wii, and that's a game I played for about 2 months without playing anything else. And I often run side tournaments in Chicago for the game. While I've never won any, I've been doing pretty well.
Cool.
A couple of other better players.
Hey, you know, I mean, at least people are playing. I can't wait for it to come out in the United States, man.
Yeah, I'd love to play online with you sometime, or maybe even get together. I know you're all the way in Ohio, but that's not too far, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's a, you were talking about hosting side tournaments in Chicago. I know there's a Indianapolis tournament being hosted soon, the Naptown Crossroad of Fists. I don't know if you were planning on or even heard of that.
Oh, I've heard of it. Actually, a couple of guys from Indianapolis came up to Fight It Out 2, which
cool.
was a couple of months ago.
Right.
And they stayed at my house the night before because they had never driven into Chicago. So
That's very nice of you.
Up there. And then Fight It Out 3 was yesterday as of the time of recording.
Yep.
And, yeah, they really want me to go down there and run TVC down there. So I might do it.
Man, I would love to have a TVC side tournament there. You need to come.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to get down there. And looks like it's going to be a cool tournament. I think it's actually being run inside an arcade.
Yeah, I've been there before for the Gen Con convention, and it's in the Circle Center Mall, like right down the street from the convention center, and it's a GameWorks arcade. It's a really nice place.
Ah, yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, speaking of GameWorks, the GameWorks in Chicago has recently exploded with tons of new fighting games. They have basically reignited the scene almost for arcades because they have a Street Fighter 4 machine, Tatsunoko versus Capcom, Marvel versus Capcom 2. Yeah.
Whoa, that's awesome. That is so cool.
The two-screen, you know, each player plays one side. Yeah. They've got TVC, Street Fighter 4, King of Fighters 12, and Tekken 6 BR. As well as upstairs, they've got Marvel vs. Capcom 2, SEC Chaos, and a couple of other older fighter games.
Any Third Strike up in there?
I don't think so, actually.
Too bad.
I'd like to see that. But they've been really supportive because we've had guys from the Chicago SRK up there every Thursday when they had a special deal. And they've been listening to us, and they're trying to get another Street Fighter 4 machine and maybe some other stuff too.
That is really cool, man. We have the a local arcade that just opened up around these parts down in Cincinnati called Arcade Legends, and they focus more on older arcade games, and then they'll have, for fighting games, it's all on console, which isn't bad. People just usually forget to bring their own controller. But other than that, it's a really nice place, and we're hoping that it sticks around.
Yeah, I'd like to check it out if I'm ever out that way.
Definitely, yeah. We've had plenty of tournaments there. I helped convince the owners to start doing ranking battles, so they're right now in the first season of those, and just yesterday they had a Street Fighter 4 and Blaze Blue, pretty big tournament. I think there were 36 or 38 people for Street Fighter 4 and over 20 for Blaze Blue, so it was pretty good turnout.
Yeah, not bad.
All right, well, let's move on through the introduction a little bit. What are some of your favorite characters in Soul Calibur and Tatsunoko?
My favorite characters in Soul Calibur series have always been Siegfried and Cassandra. I just kind of like how they play. They play very differently. But, you know, I do Cassandra for a tournament play, but Siegfried was the first character I ever really learned in a fighting game, like beyond just what moves did what. I mean, those Soul Calibur 2 tournaments I went to a few years ago when I didn't really know about the scene. I played Nightmare, who plays just like Siegfried because they didn't have a Siegfried character in 2. In TVC, I like Yatterman. He's the best character in my opinion. He's got a lot of stuff that still hasn't been discovered, and a lot of stuff that has been discovered I can't even do. And then I mix up Yatterman with a bunch of different characters to form a lot of teams, I guess.
Cool.
In Chicago, pretty much the best player in Chicago goes by Empty Shiki on the forums, and he uses Yatterman and Roll, which is awesome to see Roll winning tournaments.
Definitely.
And, yeah, so I believe at Fight It Out 2, Empty Shiki used Yatterman Roll, and I used Yatterman Duranjo, and we got first and second using those teams.
Yatterman,
awesome.
He's something else with the pressure. He can apply so much pressure.
Yeah, that SRK motion where he like jumps forward and spins the ball thing is an awesome move.
Yeah, I kept getting hit. I kept getting hit by a friend, and I was like, "Oh, it's an overhead! Oh my god!"
Yeah, it's an overhead.
It took me a while.
It's basically a Karis killer, which Karis is really dangerous in that game.
Yeah, he is.
Try to do that low light kick, and you can go right over the top of it with the overhead.
Excellent.
Yeah, but I think that it's fun to play characters like that because they kind of come out of nowhere. When TVC first came out, and there were all these lists of, the tiers people thought it would be. Everyone had, Roll obviously at the very bottom. They didn't even give her a chance. And since Yatterman was weird, they put him near the bottom as well.
Yeah.
And now there's talk that maybe he's the second best character in the game, and Roll is high mid tier. So it's pretty cool to see a game from when it comes out and see how it evolves.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
Other games like Third Strike, I came in 3 or 4 years into the game, so everything was already decided by then.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I played Tatsunoko a little more often. We actually had some time last night after the tournament for some Tatsunoko casuals, and I run with Polymer and Chun-Li. I enjoy that team.
Yeah, Chun-Li is very, very good in that game.
Yeah.
Yesterday at the Fight It Out 3 tournament, Karasa came up from St. Louis all the way to Chicago to play TVC with us, and well, he's probably in the top 10 in the country, I would say.
Nice.
Don't quote me on that, though, even though we're recording. I guess that counts as quoting me on it. But he plays Chun-Li and Duranjo, I believe. I don't think that he lost maybe more than 1 or 2 fights all day yesterday in casuals.
Wow.
Out of probably, 30 or 40. I think maybe he lost once or twice to me and once or twice to Frankie Gomez.
Well, all right. You have now a choice, sir. We can either talk some more strategy for Tatsunoko and Soul Calibur, or we can delve into the tournament talk and community stuff that you yourself wanted to talk about.
Well, I think that the community stuff is important to talk about because the PowerUp Fighters, is supposed to show what the Midwest scene is about.
Sure.
We could talk about the specific games, but that's only going to interest the people who either already play them or are interested in them. We could talk about that as well. But I'd like to talk about the community and a couple of things with that.
Please do.
Well, one of the things I was thinking of this morning actually was about how you get people involved in the scene. And I got involved in the fighting game scene because of a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 player named Derek Learns Slow. His name is Derek Douglas. He's from Chicago. He's probably in the top 2 or 3 in the Midwest for Marvel. No one ever talks about him because I'm not really sure why.
Yeah, I've never heard of him.
there's a few videos of him online playing against Justin Long and all those guys, and like we get to the grand finals of like season speedings or something like that, and just get taken out by Justin Long. But he's really good at that game, trust me.
Sounds
and
like it.
he you know told me all about SRK and got me involved in the scene. And I was just thinking about that the other day, and how I live in Northwest Indiana, and there are probably 10 or 12 really good players at different games around here, better than me, definitely, at their respective games. There's a couple of guys, these two brothers, we call them the twins because they look so much alike, even though they're not twins, that they could, be in top 5 in third strike all the time, but they never want to come to tournaments. And I've got a couple other players who are good at Tekken around here and King of Fighters. I just find it very difficult to get them involved in the scene, and I think if we could just get people to kind of public places, like you said, you have your new arcade there. That's the kind of stuff I think that we need to get more people involved in the scene, especially people that have potential to be really good and could enjoy themselves.
Now, these players you're talking about, what makes you think that they aren't coming? What's keeping them from coming?
I think that they're actually they're afraid that they're not as good as they really are. Like they see videos on YouTube or something like that, and I guess they just don't see themselves at that level. But the YouTube stuff, a lot of it that you see is the very highest levels of play.
Yeah.
Which there's a very, very small number of people that actually do that stuff in tournament play. But I know that these guys are good because I've gone to tournaments. I've been in top 5 in Tekken and third strike tournaments all over, and these guys are better than me. So I know that they can do at least that well.
Do you think maybe it's a money thing? They don't want to come in and put the money down, or maybe it's just more of the not wanting to get embarrassed thing? Because I'm thinking maybe you could do ranking battles. I don't know how prevalent those are in your area, but maybe that would be something that's a little bit more non-evaluative and would bring people in without so much risk, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason. I didn't think so much about the money thing, because to me, I think, well, I'm going to be at a tournament all day, and say I went out for a whole day and did some other stuff. Say I went to the mall and whatever people do.
Right.
And I spent, $40 or $50 doing a bunch of stuff around town. Well, I spend about $40 going to a tournament, and that's what I enjoy to do on a weekend,
Right, yeah.
I was at Fight It Out 3 yesterday for something like 13 hours,
That's
and I
cool.
only spent $35. So that's not too bad, but I guess, when you're playing for money, things are a little bit different. But
I suppose so.
I don't know. I think the attitude I have when I go into a tournament is, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 games, I don't enter the tournament expecting to leave with any money. I pay the money for the tournament to get the experience, learn some new things, get to play with some good players. And, if I'm lucky or if I happen to be having a really good day, maybe I'll, get top 3 and make my, entry feedback or something like that.
Right, yeah. Well, so these players, they're good, but they just aren't that interested, It's like, okay, fine, to each their own. So what do you think should be done about getting new players into the scene?
I think that one of the best things that can be done in a place where there's not a huge local scene is to throw a small free tournament out of your house or out of a school or something like that. My roommate and I have done that at a comic book shop locally where, we had what was called a Bring Your Own Fighting Game tournament.
That sounds cool already.
And BYFOG, sorry. And, well, basically how it works, and this is my favorite tournament format that could possibly exist, because you have to be able to play more than one game to be able to win this tournament. You have everybody bring at least one fighting game, and that's their entry fee to the tournament. All that they need is that they have a fighting game to bring and use for the tournament. They get to keep the fighting game when they leave, of course.
Yeah.
and you put all the games in a hat, or the names of the game, and you draw it out, and the first name drawn, that's the game everyone has to play for the first round of the tournament. Once that round is over, you draw another game, and that's what you have to play for the second round, and so on.
Now, are we talking like any time frame of game, or do you like to keep it like within current generation to make sure systems are available?
I think right now I've got a little box sitting in my living room with a bunch of little cards on it with names of games. I think we've got something like 120 different games on there.
Wow.
So, I know, with emulation, and we have a lot of old systems, and I've had this guy bring his Sega Saturn with, all different kinds of games on there that people have never had a chance to play. So, you draw the name out, and if that game is there at the time, I wouldn't say we have all those games available every time, but we have a pretty decent selection. One of the best moments ever at a tournament like that was the very first match of the tournament was Bushido Blade 2. And one of the guys had never played the game before. And the other guy, just ran up and stabbed him at the beginning of the match, and that was it.
Wow.
I think someone recorded that and put it on YouTube. So if you ever want to see a funny video, look up Why Bushido Blade 2 Sucks.
I think I'll look it up right now. I think I've seen that before.
Oh, really? Yeah, that was taken in my living room.
Why Bushido Blade Sucks. Let's see here. Go to YouTube, rather.
Right.
So you guys, that's very unique. I've heard of some people saying, oh, let's play old fighting games, but I've never heard of, like, actually drawing lots for them. That's really cool.
Yeah, so the last major one we did, I ended up drawing Tekken 5 against, a guy who used to be really involved in the Tekken 3 scene, and I had basically gone through the whole tournament without losing a match, got to the grand finals, and had to play this guy, and he beat me clean with no trouble. So, like I said, you have to be able to play everything if you're going to win this tournament.
Right, yeah. Well, it doesn't seem like I can find the video, but oh well, I can imagine how very funny that must have been. Yeah,
maybe I'll send you a link to it, and
Sure.
You could put it on the page with the podcast.
Hey, that would be cool.
Right. So yeah, that's one of those bring your own fighting game tournaments. They're really fun, and you can get a lot of people involved who maybe wouldn't go to a major tournament in a big city or want to spend any money.
Right.
And yeah, it was pretty successful. I think the last one we did had, I think it had 16 entries, which was pretty good.
Cool.
We're packed in my little apartment, 16 people.
Do you guys ever have entry fees just for fun, or is it just free all the time?
I think the very first one we ever did had an entry fee, but beyond that, I think it's mostly just been for fun.
That's cool.
People. I think you had a good insight there about people not wanting to pay to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't necessarily mind. I went 2-0 yesterday in Street Fighter 4 and 1-2 0-2 in Street Fighter 4.
Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, and 1-2 in Blaze Blue. So it wasn't the best showing, but oh well.
Yeah, I got pieced out in Blaze Blue yesterday. I went 1-2 in Street Fighter 4, so it's kind of opposite, but I did well in some other games.
Cool. I almost won the Pinbot Pinball tournament. It was very close for a while, but then someone got Pinbot is, if you've never played Pinbot, it's a very difficult and screw you pinball game. It's a very angry machine, and the highest score set by the proprietor was 5 million some odd, like 5,100,000, something like that. Okay, no big deal. None of us are going to get that, and that's not what we're aiming for. We're just trying to beat each other. And it was pretty close. Some dude had 900,000, and then I got 1 million, and then the dude had 1,200,000. But then some jerk comes up and gets 3 million, and it's just like, what? And I consistently could get like 1.5 million, like every other try, but I just couldn't get his like perfect sequence of solar value double score crap that got him that 3 million points, and he walked away with the G.I. Joe helicopter nerd prize. So
All right.
It wasn't life size, mind you. It was more model size, but it was still, I was a little jealous.
Yeah, understandable. That actually reminds me of another thing I wanted to talk about. It was basically something I said to Six yesterday at the tournament, was that it's a really big world, and if you think you're good at something, you're probably not good at it.
Right.
And maybe you're okay at the game, or maybe you know what you're doing, but there's always going to be someone who's going to show you how it's really done.
Yeah.
And if you get involved with the scene for whatever it is you do, maybe you play basketball, maybe you play fighting games, maybe you write essays. That's what I used to do competitively, actually.
Really?
Yeah. But like yesterday with Karasa coming and showing Chicago how Tatsunoko versus Capcom is really done. And my best game is actually Super Puzzle Fighter. And I got second place at Midwest Championships. I lost to Keats in the grand finals. He's really great. And so I wanted to run Puzzle Fighter yesterday at the tournament, and I couldn't really get anybody to enter, but one guy whose registration date on SRK is July 09
Nice.
wanted to play it, and he sent me a message on SRK. And so he came to the tournament yesterday, and we ended up doing a money match. And I would say that before yesterday, I would consider myself to be really good at that game. Yeah, he didn't lose a single round, and I don't know if you know how that game works, but usually you win within a minute, or else the match just goes on forever.
Now I'm thinking of two games. There's the one where it's actually like 2D fighting. Is that Gym Fighter?
That's Gym Fighter.
Okay, this
that's
is the
that's
this
a
is like
fighting game.
Right. This is the actual puzzle game.
Right.
Okay, I always get them confused.
Yeah, in Super Puzzle Fighter, you drop color blocks, and some of the blocks are little circles that are bombs.
Right.
And you try to get as many of the color blocks together, and then put a circle of the same color on there and explode all those.
Okay.
And it's kind of weird because in a game like maybe Tetris Attack, the thing you want to go through it for is a long chain of small combinations, whereas in Puzzle Fighter you want to just build one really big tower of one color and explode that.
Right.
Well, that is the strategy I used, and that's the strategy I've seen at competitions and things like that. And I basically have that strategy down. Well, this guy, Jala Soul is his name, and I'll go right now and say that if anybody wants to add him on PSN, they will have a field day trying to beat him at Puzzle Fighter. He, in the time I could build one tower of a color, was able to build two and then have a third one started.
Wow, of the same size?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So he could attack me, and I think he beat me in 22 seconds one round, and most of the others were somewhere in the realm of 30 or 40 seconds, which is absolutely great.
Yeah, very
and
impressive.
It's a big world. The first time I went to Soul Calibur 4 tournament, I had the unfortunate drawing of playing Thuggish Pond in the first round. I don't know if you know who Thuggish Pond is, but he just won Soul Calibur 4 Nationals last weekend.
Oh, okay.
And I went to the Soul Calibur 4 tournament last summer, right when the game came out. And I was doing pretty well in the game, and yeah, I drew this guy in the first round, and everyone was just calling him by his first name, which is Damien. So I didn't know it was Thuggish Pond. And he mirror matched me with Sung Nina, and he pretty much destroyed me. And that's when I got to thinking about this whole big world thing. And
Definitely.
the best thing about being is that you get to see the really high levels of play of everything. And like I
Right.
said, that works with everything. That's not just fighting. It's any kind of competition. I know you do martial arts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you been in competition for that?
No, it's really not my thing. I prefer to do that more as a hobby, really. But I do understand and am very proud of the members of the dojo who do go and they'll participate in the local, like Ohio extreme fighting and things like that. And I've gone to at least one of their fights, and it's really cool to watch them do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a way to learn is just to even observe some people that are better than you at something or that are, more competitive.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to learn a game specifically by just playing at home against a computer or even playing in practice mode. You might learn some combos, but you're not going to learn how the game works
Right.
unless you go and play against other people.
Now you've talked in the PM you sent me. You said you wanted to talk about how community of fighting game players is no different than any other kind of community. So since we're kind of on that topic, let me pick out another thing that you wrote down here. Oh, if everyone agrees with and gets along perfectly within a group of any kind, then you're doing it wrong. Now let's talk about some maybe current events. What do you think is something that people in the fighting game community are kind of at odds against each other right now? Anything?
Well, there's a couple of things. I actually cringe every time I click on fighting game discussion on SRK because I actually have been tending to avoid it lately because it's just a bunch of arguments.
Hmm.
And there's two major things I can think of off the top of my head. One is the Smash Brothers versus SRK problem.
Oh no, not that. Not that.
Right. I've been in Smash Brothers tournaments. I've never done very well in them. I'm not very good at the game, but I don't see why it's not a fighting game. That's the end of the discussion for me.
Right. And at the end of the
Fighting
discussion
game because you have characters, they fight against each other, and
Right,
someone wins
yeah.
at the end.
It's like the only beef I have with that community is no item play. I wish items were on because I feel personally that it balances out the characters. But that's where it ends for me. Other than that, everything else is fine.
Yeah. The other one is this hatred towards certain top players like Justin
Oh,
Walker,
yeah.
Apex, or whatever. I don't see why people hate them. They're the best of the best, really, when it comes, especially to Street Fighter 4 and other Capcom games. I'm not sure how good they are at, say, Soul Calibur or something like that, but they've done a lot for the community that we couldn't imagine to do. They've spread it out to the media. They've been in the news and all kinds of things like that, and they've gotten the public eye focused on fighting games, especially Street Fighter 4 in the last few months.
Yeah.
And I don't see why people hate them. Maybe just they're jealous that they're not that good or something like that.
I bet that's the majority, definitely.
Or, people put online like, well, I'll take Justin Wong any day.
Right, yeah.
Like, okay, sure you will. I've never personally played against Justin Wong. I met him at Midwest Championships, but that's about it. He was in the Tatsunoko versus Capcom tournament, but I got knocked out by Karasa before that. Before I got to play against him.
Did Cross take on Justin Wong?
I believe they played a few times. Yeah.
Cool.
I know that Keats, Justin Wong, and Karasa were all doing very, very well that weekend in TVC.
Nice.
And they ran two separate tournaments, and I believe Karasa won the first one and Keats won the second one. Or I could be wrong, though. Maybe Justin Wong won one of the tournaments. But those were definitely the top three players in TVC that weekend.
Very cool. All right.
So, yeah, and then I wanted to go on with that just one moment with these dramas within, regional SRK threads and people arguing amongst themselves and making enemies and whatever. I don't see the point in that. We're all trying to do the same thing here. I mean, what I said about if you got everyone liking you and agreeing with you on everything, then you're doing it wrong. Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, if everybody's happy, then nobody's happy, I think.
Hmm.
I recently I'll come right out and say it. I created some drama myself by thinking about the way a tournament was run, and there are people that agree with me, people that disagree with me. I talked with the tournament organizer and things like that, and everything got worked out in the end. But I think that if they had run the tournament the way I wanted it to be run, then maybe some other people would have been unhappy. So that was a bit selfish on my part. But that's the idea, is that, you know, if you're happy, then maybe someone else isn't happy, and if you're not happy, then someone else is happy. So that's how communities work.
Right.
I don't think that there's ever going to be a community that exists where everyone's happy, and if they are, then it's probably some kind of cult.
Right. Who wants the Kool-Aid? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the idea, I guess. So as long as everyone's involved and gets their word in, I think that that's what matters. If everybody's got their voice heard, maybe it won't change anything per se, but I think people feel the need to be heard and feel like their opinion matters. So
yeah, everybody wants to be important. They want their 15 minutes of fame, and it's really bad online because it's anonymous. You know, you can say pretty much whatever you want. You get banned from the forum, but whoa, you still tore into that guy or whatever.
Yeah, you just open a new account anyway.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, we had just recently had some drama for a player named Gin Master. He was running a tournament, and there was some, I guess, bad stories from him in the past, and then this tournament kind of got shady, and one of the Dayton players, who is, that's my local crew, Dayton scene, and one of the local players around here went to the trouble of, like, calling the hotel and trying to find out how legit this guy's tournament was, and, well, it ended up that, like, he only ran one game on the day of, and only, like, 8 people showed up, and then they ended up coming to Arcade Legends afterwards to play in the much bigger Street Fighter 4 tournament was happening that day. So, you know, it was kind of strange. But then the guy who, like, outed Gin Master was then outside talking to Gin Master, and I left before anything happened, but I don't think they got in, like, a fight or anything silly like that. They just...
That is way too interesting.
Yeah, they're just talking, basically. I guess they're settling their differences, getting it all out there. But yeah, that's like the only, it's like a piece of drama that I've known of around here. Everything else is pretty much just par for the course.
Yeah. For the most part, we on SRK are a bunch of grown men. We shouldn't be, you know, participating in middle school, you know, complaining about each other and things like that. So
yeah.
To the people I complained about recently, I apologize. That's all.
Yeah, it's
wanted to get that on recording.
It's the chance you take when you join a forum community. You know, I mean, you can't know who these people are. You don't know how they're gonna act when it's anonymous like that. So, if you want to do the best to do best forum practices, then it's up to you. You know, don't fall into the traps. Don't, I don't know, take up an argument just for an argument's sake. You know, don't worry about it. It's a forum, basically.
Right, and I guess what I basically told myself was, if you don't like the way that they ran something, then run it yourself better.
Right, yeah, definitely.
So that's what I plan to do, is try to run some tournaments in the future here, get some more bring your own fighting game tournaments going on, and maybe try to include some people from the SRK scene. Maybe if I can't bring Northwest Indiana to them, I can bring them to Northwest Indiana.
Nice, maybe. Yeah, I was very happy that I'd gotten the ranking battles at Arcade Legends started up, and now that they're kind of going on their own, and the proprietor's getting used to like the posting the results and everything, I don't have to remind him, and he's getting the hang of running everything. I'm starting to. My original idea was to have a PowerUp theme brand tournament that I would run for different fighting games. I'm not sure what, but. That's definitely something I'm thinking of more now that the ranking battles are established and it's kind of behind me. I'm thinking about either using Arcade Legends, or I think there's another LAN center opening up in the Dayton area. And using one of those two places, or maybe both, I don't know how ambitious I might want to be. And then run my PowerUp tournaments, I don't know.
Well, another thing that could happen is that PowerUp tournaments could actually be branded PowerUp and happen in different places.
Mm-hmm.
You could have a couple people maybe in Chicago, a couple people in Indianapolis, St. Louis, and over in Ohio, and they could all be running PowerUp.
You know, that's exactly sort of like the vision that I have sometimes. It seems a little egotistical, but it has good intentions, I think. I mean, I'm not trying to take all the credit. Sure, I like credit, but I'm not trying to be like, hey, look at me, I'm making a scene, you know. It's not really about that. I mean, I love fighting games just as much as anyone else. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this podcast.
Right.
So it's
You
not
wouldn't
like
have a website or anything like that.
right, and I'm not doing it for money or anything. I mean, I don't have any ads on the website. It's all coming out of my pocket, all the equipment that I get and stuff like that. So, bottom line is, I do want like a certain amount of respect, and I can't get that right now because I'm so new still, even though I'm doing these things that other people haven't done. But you know, it's just not about. It's not just about the respect, and it's not just about getting people into the fighting games. It's a little bit of both, you know. I want both.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also it seems like the one of the purposes of Power Up Fighters is to connect people with each other. It's not just to connect them with you.
Right.
I think that right now I'm going to go out and say anybody listening to this podcast better send us Siren your Midwest Roundup information because we all want to know who you are. We want to know who each other are.
Yes, please
There's
do.
a player who lives 3 blocks away from me that I never heard of before, and it would be great to get to know you if you exist.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, right now I have a lot of Ohio players on the Midwest Roundup, and a few others. I actually got NKI to do a Midwest Roundup, if you've ever heard of NKI.
Yeah,
great Super Turbo and HD Remix player.
Yep, and I've seen J Money on there.
Yeah.
J Money runs the Fight It Out tournaments in Chicago. Probably, I'd say, one of the best tournament organizers in the Chicago area right now.
Yeah, he was interested in a podcast. I need to, I think I sent him a PM, but I should probably follow up soon. Make sure to get him on here, talk to him a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say that he would probably give you a really good podcast.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's since we're kind of going in that direction anyways, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the Midwest. And now, a trend that I've seen, because I do keep my tournament listings page pretty much up to date. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good little database of tournaments. Now, I don't know why, but most of the tournaments that I find on SRK, Dustloop, wherever, for Midwest only, mind you, are pretty much in Ohio. I mean, the vast majority, I would say like 40 to 50% of, well, maybe not that much, maybe like 30%. But the rest of the states only have like maybe 10% or whatever, however many there are. There are a lot more fighting game tournaments in the eastern Midwest. It seems like the West, like around Kansas and Nebraska, and definitely the Dakotas. The Dakotas are like barren. There's nothing going on there. I don't know if like there are even people living there. Maybe it's just space called a state. I don't know. Never been there. But I shouldn't say Kansas because they have the Max Out tournament there, which is regular. So, but still, I mean, that's only like one tournament. I mean, as you come further east to Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, basically those 5 states are where a lot of the concentration of, I don't know if you can call players concentrated in the Midwest, but this is where most of the events and players apparently are.
Well, I mean, a lot of it just has to do with basic, geography and population.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're near Ohio, Ohio's actually a pretty condensed populated state, as well as Illinois. Illinois has a lot of farmland in the middle, but it has Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go out into those areas, I mean, I've seen some threads on SRK for places in the western Midwest.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get people together if you live hundreds of miles apart.
Definitely.
There's some big cities around there, but I don't know if maybe they just have their own little communities. Maybe they're all there. That's why I mentioned the Midwest Roundup. Maybe there's a a core group of 10 or 15 people in Bismarck, and we don't even know about them. But
Right.
you know, they should get involved with some kind of forum community, send their stuff to you, and expand the scene if they're, you know, they're playing fighting games. And it's good, like I said, it's a big world. Get to know exactly what it is you're getting into, I think.
I agree. Yeah, there's something I like to talk about with people who are familiar with or not even familiar with the Smash Brothers scene is that their Midwest Championship League is very well organized, I think. And they actually have two different circuits that split the Midwest in half. You have the West Circuit and the East Circuit. And, you know, I think that is just such a wonderful way to overcome the geographic barriers. And then sometimes I believe I need to go to another Smash Brothers tournament because I feel like I've been kind of ignoring the game with Street Fighter and Blaze Blue, everything at Arcade Legends. But even though I don't necessarily play Smash Brothers competitively, although I enjoy it, and always get my ass kicked by Ike. I don't know why. I just can't dodge his stupid, huge golden sword. But but it's just interesting, and it's interesting to see how they've organized themselves to maximize travel time, or minimize rather travel time, and maximize the number of people that they're getting at each event. And I think that's something that could definitely translate over to the more, I guess, I don't know how to say it, the more SRK themed fighting games.
Yeah, well, one thing I'd say that is, I don't know too much about competitive Smash Bros., especially what goes on Smash boards and places like that. I know that they're very well organized and they have a ton of players, which is great. And I've been to quite a few tournaments in which Smash Bros. Was run alongside other fighting games, which I think is also really great. But the SRK style tends to be, at least in Chicago, like you usually have tournaments based out of gatherings that people have. You know, some will have a gathering weekly at their house to play whatever new game that they're focusing on, and then when a tournament comes, so all those guys will go. So it's more about knowing people, I think, in person than just on the forums. I mean, in the Chicago thread, and I only live in Northwest Indiana, it takes me 30 minutes to get downtown. I probably know more than half the people in person. So it's not so much organizing people, you know, from a big geographic area. It's organizing people that know each other and getting them to do stuff. It's more like a social networking kind of thing, like Facebook even, where you post an event and everyone you know goes to the event.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe SRK needs to advertise their tournaments beyond just in a forum thread, and I think the tournament listing on PowerUp is helpful, and there probably needs to be some more beyond that, too.
Hey, I know that there are a few posters who have given time into things like Google Maps and just a general little forum thread list similar to my tournament listings page. But it doesn't seem like they're ever very popular or get stickied or anything like that. Apparently the people just lose interest, or whatever the case may be, the threads just die.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to make a generalization, but I'm going to. I mean, a lot of people, I know, that's horrible. But a lot of people on SRK, you know, have, you know, full-time jobs and maybe even have kids and things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know so much about the Smash Bros. Community, but there's, you know, the stereotype that they're a little younger and, you know, a little bit more free with their time to maybe travel across the state or across state lines to go to a tournament. Whereas, you know, even just for me to spend, you know, 2 or 3 days at Midwest Championships, I had to reschedule like 3 things. And
yeah. You got to get time off of work, yeah.
And I don't think that necessarily has to happen with a lot of different kinds of communities. You know, maybe a school basketball team gets to travel all over the country because, you know, the school accommodates them. But I don't think I'm going to tell my classes, hey, I want to go to season's meetings this year, so I'm going to need a few days off school.
I don't know. So what do you think? Should you were saying maybe more of a local social networking sort of thing? Should maybe each state get a little bit more focus in the Midwest? You know, just like maybe I or someone else could make some contacts in those states, and you know, whoever that contact is, if they're a good contact and are serious about trying to grow a scene where they're at, then they could become like a nexus for the states that really don't have anywhere to go, like Nebraska, maybe Iowa, definitely the Dakotas. I'm curious. I mean, this is probably going to be something I talk about a lot now from now on until it's resolved. Is like, are there any fighting game players in the Dakotas? I mean, really?
Maybe there are.
Maybe.
The games sell everywhere, so people buy them.
Yeah, I'll need to check out the Midwest region thread a little bit closer and see if there's any Dakota thread, like on page 15 or something.
Yeah. What would also be interesting is if, say, Xbox Live or PlayStation Network or whatever had a location, you know, for whoever you're playing against. Maybe a lot of people play online, especially, you know, Street Fighter 4's online is not terrible, which is, you know, better than almost any other fighting game.
I've got to disagree with you on that, but I'll let you. Maybe it's better for you, but
HD Remix is great.
HD Remix is pretty good. Street Fighter 4 kicks my little fanny every day when I try to play online. I can never find anyone, and connections that say they're good, obviously, I'm unable to play. That's like the only reason it ever gives me. So I don't have a very good personal experience with the Street Fighter 4 online, but I get what you're saying. People could be just online and not...
Well, that like when I was talking about Puzzle Fighter before, this guy, Jalasol, is a July '09 entry into SRK.
Mm-hmm.
When I put on there that I wanted, you know, I was gonna run Puzzle Fighter and I wanted to get some people involved and I was trying to hype it up and whatever, he sent me a PM and he said something like, "Well, I see your PSN gamer tag, but I don't see you anywhere high in the rankings on Puzzle Fighter online." And I sent him back, and I was kind of half joking. I'm like, "Well, you don't have to play online to be good. You know, there's plenty of people that don't play online all the time." And so he added me, and then, you know, beat me, you know, every time I've ever played him since.
Pretty handily.
And I think that there's a lot of people online. I remember a couple of years ago, some GGPO player no one had ever heard of in Third Strike won a tournament. The first one he ever went to, and he got first place using like Oro or something like that. No one knew how to play against Oro, and no one had ever heard of this guy, and he ended up walking away with first place. So I think that the internet, not just SRK or Dustloop or Caliber Forum or whatever, I think that actually there's a lot of people playing online that we'll never meet in person unless we have some way of contacting them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know exactly how to go about that, but there's like a general path. Just get online and see who I can contact, really.
Yeah, like there's a lot of really good Soul Calibur players that still play Soul Calibur 4 online, despite the fact that playing that game online is like watching, you know, ice melt in the winter. But I've gone, you know, I've done pretty well in Soul Calibur tournaments in the past, and I go online and I might lose 10 in a row to these people. I don't know who they are, but they're good. And I think it's maybe even the same thing as what I was saying with Northwest Indiana. Maybe they don't know that they're good.
Maybe.
They need to show the world who they are, and I think that a lot of people with Street Fighter 4 are coming out of nowhere and doing well in that game that maybe weren't involved in the scene beforehand. Because it's not always going to be, you know, the top 10 or 15 players that you hear about. You know, eventually there's going to be some new guys that come around and really show what's up.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a shot and see if I can find some people out there playing and see if I can find their scenes and see what's up over there. Get them on a podcast or something.
Yeah, that would be great. You know, the Bismarck crew, maybe it's 3 people.
Right, yeah.
Hanging out with some guy's basement and play Street Fighter or something like that all the time. But yeah, I think that one of the things SRK focuses more on is local and people that you know, which is good, but it also is kind of limiting when you only have maybe one or two tournaments a year in the Midwest, where a lot of people come from all over the place. I know Seasons Beatings is coming up in October. Yeah. I want to go to that. It'll be my first time going.
Oh, are you going to be at that?
Well, like I said,
You're
I was
thinking
talking
about it.
Being at school.
Yeah.
But I'd like to, for sure. And if I know some people that are going, I can maybe try to go along with them.
Yeah.
It would be great to get there.
Well, I'm sure I'll meet you sometime soon, then either at the Naptown Crossroad or at Seasons Beatings, since I'll definitely have to attend Seasons Beatings because I've already reserved the hotel room, and right now the Naptown tournament seems pretty solid. I should not have any problem getting to that. So, at one or the other.
I hope to be at the Naptown one.
Cool.
As well. So everyone should go to the Naptown Cross-Town tournament, so you can meet me in Osiris.
Exactly.
See the faces behind the voices.
Right. Don't worry, I'm not like hideous. It's okay. Don't be scared.
Yeah, I am hideous. Actually,
Uh-oh.
But I'm nice.
Oh well. Hey, that's Shrek. It's not a big deal. Of course, then when your princess turns into an ogre, I'm not sure how I would feel about that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Neither would I.
All right. Well, let's take the zoom even further back. I've spoken with Galleon, and he's a friend of mine, more or less. And of course, he runs Seasons Beatings along with Fuji. I've done a podcast with him that will be released a little bit closer to Seasons Beatings' actual date.
Okay.
But let me get your opinion on this in these final 6 minutes or however long we have. And he says that, it's not about the Midwest getting more majors. That's not his priority. His priority, I'm not saying it's not important to him. The way sometimes maybe he thinks it's important, but then the thing that is more important is getting the Midwest players to go to like final round and tournaments in New York, and definitely out to the West Coast where all of those great players are. That's his priority, getting Midwest players to travel to places like EVO and Devastation and just big West Coast tournaments in general, and probably some of the like New Jersey or New York competitions where the East Coast players are. So what do you feel about that?
Well, that would be great, obviously, but that would require a lot more dedication than a lot of people have, I think.
Right.
I know I don't necessarily have that much dedication to go all the way out to one of those tournaments. I might go to Ohio or Indianapolis or something like that, but I'm sure there are people that would love to. I know the guys that are involved with the Indy tournament, these two guys, Jay and Greg, they stayed at my house that one night.
Mm-hmm.
They did whatever they could, and they got themselves to EVO on their own dime this year after, they basically were at Fight It Out, which was their first tournament they ever went to, Fight It Out 2. And they said, this is awesome. I love this kind of environment. We're going to go to EVO.
Nice.
And they got themselves there. They got a hotel room, and they played Street Fighter and Soul Calibur and a bunch of other stuff, and they said they had a great time. So that kind of inspired me to want to go maybe next year to EVO or to try to get to some of these major tournaments. I saw
same for me.
That documentary.
I Got Next?
Yeah. I Got Next, and I saw the final round environment, and that looked really great. And so I'd love to be able to do something like that, and I think that there are players in the Midwest that are definitely good enough to compete on those levels.
Yeah. Now, see, a point where I kind of disagree with Callian is like, yes, the Midwest players should definitely travel to the big regional West, East, and maybe, I guess, final round is more Southeast. So those regional tournaments, final round, East Coast Throwdown, I can think of. I can't really think of many major East Coast tournaments off the top of my head, but definitely East Coast Throwdown. EVO, obviously. And then Devastation would probably be one to go to in, I think that was in Arizona. And then perhaps some California tournaments. I know that they have a lot of ranking battles and smaller tournaments, but I can't think of any big regional name tournaments out of California. But the point where I disagree with Galleon slightly is that I do think that the Midwest would greatly benefit from a little bit of like growth within itself. You know, if we could get the scene for people, like you said, people either don't have the means or don't have the real, I guess, desire to travel all that way for even something like Evo. Maybe they just don't want to go. They just don't feel like it. I don't know. For whatever reason, probably monetary. I can't think of anyone who wouldn't want to go to Evo. But
yeah, a lot of it's monetary. You know, it's a big investment of
right.
time and money to do
Right.
something like that.
Right. So the way I think is like the Midwest needs more like how the 5 states I mentioned earlier, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, where all of this great concentration is. Well, maybe we need to add like, well, we've got Midwest championships and we've got seasons beatings. I know the Smash Brothers community has its majors and its league, so that's great. But maybe
I think Frosty's Faustines as a major, Chicago major.
Which one was that?
Frosty's Faustines.
Oh yeah.
Guilty Gear major. Elven Shadow runs that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean maybe these types of things need more exposure, you know?
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that they actually do have pretty good exposure, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it is much more likely to see East Coast player like maybe Justin Wong or something at seasons beatings than to see a Midwest player at East Coast Throwdown.
Yeah, that's true.
They come here, but we don't go there. But I think that it's another one of those things that discourages people that aren't, super great at a game to, show up at Midwest Championships and Justin Wong sitting in the room, and then they think, oh, no, I don't have a chance of winning at all.
Never think that.
Probably shouldn't have gone in thinking you were going to win a tournament. That's my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you should have some confidence in your game, but only one person's going to win, and you might have 100 people entering, so...
Yeah.
Don't get discouraged by people that are good. Learn from people that are good.
Yeah, pepper your enthusiasm with a little realism. That's probably the best way to go about it. I don't know. I guess that's my dream, though, is to have the Midwest a little bit, a lot more connected and have a few more majors happening so people that can't travel will have something to get to, and perhaps, the people will get better. I mean, how did California and New York and the East Coast, how did those places get so good? Well, there are so many people playing. Sure, they're closer. Sure, they have some arcades. But, I mean, the people are playing more. So it's not necessarily about the Midwest going, playing in one tournament, getting our asses handed to us, and then coming back. That's part of it. That's part of it to help us learn. The other part of it, which I think is more important, or at least equally important, is to get the Midwest players to play more, to have more people playing in the Midwest, to kind of grow within the, I guess, grassroots. Grassroots is a pretty decent word for it, but to grow the community in the Midwest and get more majors happening. And even though we may never reach like third strike level for West Coast or, whatever, at least it would help get people better at the games because they would be playing more. I refuse to believe that, the West and East Coasts are just naturally better at fighting games. It doesn't make any sense.
Not. I agree. I think what we were talking about earlier with the arcades actually springing back up, it's 2009. People thought arcades were dead, and places like GameWorks is showing that arcades can function and still make money, which was the big problem for a while. And like GameWorks in Chicago, it's actually in Schaumburg, which is a suburb. It's actually a pretty good drive for anybody who wants to go there. But every Thursday night for the last month or so, I guess that they've actually gotten to the point where they have to keep a list of the order of people trying to play Street Fighter 4. And one thing about the arcade system that's different than the console system is that you have to get better, or else you're only going to have one turn and then have to wait 2 hours to play again.
Right.
So if you want to play another round, you have to beat the other guy, and that's one way that people, they're forced to get better if they have no choice.
Yeah.
To get better. They either get better or go home.
That's definitely something that carries over from the Japanese scene, I think, with their single elimination and definite focus on arcade community.
Definitely, I agree. We kind of have been weaned to play on console, and if you lose, you just get another try, which is fine if you're just trying to play. But if you want to get better, you have to have some kind of incentive to get better. And at a tournament, maybe it's respect, maybe it's a prize, maybe it's money. But at the arcade, it's pure just you have to get better if you want to keep playing. And I think that's one of the best incentives you can think of.
Definitely. Well, that's kind of an awkward point to end on, but I don't know. We're a little bit over an hour, like 3 minutes, but like to keep it to an hour. So, any final words? Not final. That's kind of awkward. What do you have to end on?
What I have to end on is, like I said before, every community has the same kind of problems, the same kind of issues. There's a bunch of people that have something in common, but you don't have everything in common. So get over the things you don't have in common and focus on what you're here for, and that's to get to know other people, play fighting games, get better, and try to expand your horizons a little bit. That's all I think is important when it comes to community, and fighting games are no different than any other.